Welcome back, David. Gonna sulk into the juicy topic. I want you to talk about sex, sunlight, and cholesterol.
Okay, all right. We can definitely do that. Um, it will be because we've had different episodes in the past on this topic, right? But there's always more information to give. So I'm going to be a little bit more detailed in terms of troubleshooting your own blood work in relationship to these markers. So first, let's talk about the markers that we're going to bring to kind of talk about today. Number one is going to be LDL cholesterol. Number two is going to be vitamin D, unsupplemented vitamin D. And then from there, at least two sex hormones and one glucocorticoids hormone, which is cortisol, right? So we have LDL cholesterol, vitamin D, cortisol, testosterone, and estrogens. Those five, I'm going to add a sixth one there, which is DHEA, right? And the reason why is DHEA plays a huge role in females, more so than in men, by a long ways. So even if you don't have testosterone or estrogen, but you do have DHEA, you can decipher a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. And so I'm going to share my screen just to kind of uh, have something to speak to while we talk about this stuff here. So hopefully you can see my screen now here.
Yep, all good.
Yeah. And so the thing that we're going to talk about is how do these actually get made in the body, right? Because if the default by most people, especially when it comes to vitamin D, is, oh, my vitamin D is low, so I'm going to take some vitamin D, right? That's basically the default. And for the most part, with pregnenolone or DHEA here, people also tend to do the same thing. They tend to be like, oh, okay, that's low. I'm going to take some, right? And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm saying let's figure out whether it would be good to do that or not, and what would be the things to correct it so that you don't have to take it for forever, right? Now, this is how it works, right? This little star is cholesterol, and it's specifically LDL cholesterol. It needs to be hit by UV light in order to be kind of broken apart. Sulfated is what it's called. And what that does is it takes cholesterol, which is a fat molecule, and it makes it water soluble, right? So that's step one in all of this is making a cholesterol molecule water soluble. Why do we want it to be water soluble? And this is where some of the details that I've, haven't really explained in the past, maybe just like in talking, but not necessarily highlighting, right? And you see these enzymes right here, 17 hydrolase, 17 and 20 hydrolase, and then this 3 beta HSD, which is also a hydrolase enzyme. So basically, I'm going to clear the board here and I'm going to highlight them again. This enzyme, this enzyme, this enzyme, all of these in the middle right here, and this enzyme. So let's see here. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven steps, right? Seven steps and a sixth one because vitamin D is right here. It also has this 17 hydrolase right here. So all of those steps are a hydrolase step. What does that mean? You've taken a molecule of cholesterol, you've made it water soluble, and now a hydrolase enzyme comes in and strips down some hydrogen off of that cholesterol molecule that is now water soluble. So a water or a hydration enzyme comes in and takes that water soluble cholesterol and now starts transforming it into vitamin D, pregnenolone, and DHEA. And then from DHEA or pregnenolone, it turns into progesterone or an androgen right here, which is a precursor to testosterone or estrogen. So hydration is the second step after sunlight to get this going. The hydration isn't necessarily about the water you drink. The hydration is about making cellular water that is deuterium depleted. Why? Because deuterium, high amounts of deuterium, slows down the enzymatic process. Low amounts of deuterium speeds up the enzymatic process. So if you have really good hydration and your cells are making water, a little bit of sunlight will make a lot of vitamin D and a lot of pregnenolone and a little DHEA. If your hydration, cellular hydration process is not so good, maybe you actually don't drink very much water at all, or are chronically indoors and don't amplify your water production through red light therapy or anything like that, then what'll happen is a lot of sunlight creates very little vitamin D, right? So this is part of the troubleshooting thing, right? If I were to see your blood work and your vitamin D is kind of low or deficient, and I ask you how much time you spend outside, and the answer is actually quite a bit. I spend a lot of time outside. Then the answer is, hey, this is a hydration problem. So I wouldn't waste my time with telling them how to, get proper sunlight exposure. It's probably not the problem. The problem is probably a hydration problem. So we would implement strategies around amplifying cellular hydration. Now, on the flip side, right, if your vitamin D is low and your cortisol, for example, is completely intact, we'll get to that in just a moment, and your testosterone is completely intact, but your vitamin D is low, now it's looking more like a sunlight problem because step one is a sunlight action right here. And since you have good testosterone and good cortisol, we know that these hydrolase enzymes are working at least to that point, right? So we know it's probably not a hydration problem, it's probably just a sunlight problem.
Mm.
Now, another little phenotype that I've seen is vitamin D is good, right? Uh, it's not great, but it's okay, right? Pregnenolone is good. These are okay. Like these are all these first three are all kind of in range, but for the amount of sunlight that somebody gets, they're not really as high as you would expect. But then you go look at their cortisol, and it's nice and high at the upper end of the range. Their testosterone is nice and high up at the upper end of the range, and so is their estrogens. That tells me without a doubt it's a hydration problem, and this is why. We talked about this first section of enzymes right here. That's all hydration. The next section of enzymes is these CPY21, CPY right here. There's another CPY right here. And then these are all part of the CPY complex as well. You notice, right, if I were to, let me just remove them and highlight them by themselves. Basically everything this way, these are all CPY related enzymes. CPY is a heme protein. What does that mean? It collects red light. So these enzymes get amplified not by hydration like these other ones over here, but by infrared light and sunlight therapy. Specific wavelengths of light interact with these specific enzymes. So, for example, these first two right here that I just put dots by that go to cortisol, they are red light dominant enzymes. So that means that they will take DHEA, and when red light is dominant, it will have a burst of cortisol. What does that sound like? Morning sunrise. Morning sunrise is completely infrared dominant, and that is when your cortisol should be at the very highest. That is what's happening with these CPY enzymes right here. These other CPY enzymes, this one and this one over here, they occur when there's lots of UV light around, specifically the 450 complex. 450, the reason why it's called 450 is that's the nanometers of light. That's in the just above the UVA range, right? So that's the middle of the day, or right before the middle of the day. And so these steps, creating testosterone, creating estrogen, don't happen at the same time as creating cortisol. They happen later in the day. The cortisol one is going to happen early in the morning, and these testosterone and estrogen ones are going to happen around mid-morning, like between 10 and noon. because of these CPY enzymes, right? So now, and I know that I've shown this diagram before, but we've talked about, just sulfating the cholesterol and how it turns into these. Now I've shown you how these enzymes play a role in the circadian mechanism of timing of when these are supposed to happen, right? So if you come back and you tell, and we determine, hey, hydration is actually good, but cortisol is not so good and testosterone is good, it tells me, hey, the thing that you're missing is morning daylight. If it's the other way around, cortisol is good, testosterone is not good, and estrogen is not good, it tells me the thing you're lacking is middle of the day sunlight exposure.
So if somebody takes vitamin D and their vitamin D levels are still very poor, it,
Then we know for a fact that it's a hydration problem because the vitamin D that you take synthetically, right, is fat soluble. It is a fat soluble vitamin when you take it orally. So the only way that you're going to convert oral vitamin D is a little bit different because it needs to be transported by the liver. That's why it'll make your LDL cholesterol go up. You need more LDL cholesterol to transport that fat soluble molecule into the liver to turn, and then the liver is going to turn it into a water soluble thing. So, yes, when you are taking loads of supplemented vitamin D and all you see is your LDL going up, but your vitamin D levels kind of not spectacular, right? Like you're taking 10,000 units and your vitamin D levels still at the bottom end of the range. It's acceptable, but not that great. It tells you that there's a hydration problem. Your liver's not able to turn it into a water soluble vitamin D molecule for all of these other processes very efficiently. So, and we know that that process of oral vitamin D turning into a water soluble happens at the liver. And so things that I would want to see in blood work is, hey, what's your BUN creatinine ratio? That also happens in the liver and in the kidneys. And if that's also kind of sky high, it starts to tell me, yes, you probably have a cellular water production problem. And so the thing is necessary. Now, the funny thing, right, is some types of sunlight are going to amplify hydration, aka red light dominant times of the day. Morning sunlight and evening sunlight are going to amplify water production. So even though I say it's a hydration problem, hydration is influenced by different types of light, right? So you could go with infrared light therapy or getting a lot of that first 3 hours of the day or the last 3 hours of the day. They're not going to dehydrate you. They're going to amplify hydration processes through infrared therapy at the mitochondrial level. And then, that also leads to the talk of, a couple episodes back where, maybe you want to really hit it really hard as far as hydrating properly and you go with some deuterium depleted water and it doesn't even really have to be fully deuterium depleted, right? Something that I have done here in my home that I built, I drilled a well, right? And I made sure that that well was deep enough to go into an aquifer. I've sent that water off and I've gotten the results back, and the water here, because my altitude is pretty high, is actually 130 parts per million deuterium. Normal water, normal drinking water is about 150, right? Until you get into deep aquifers. And the higher the altitude of that aquifer, the more deuterium depleted. That's just the natural water cycle of the planet. And so if you know about some of the stuff, you can, and obviously depending on where you live and stuff like that, you can hack this without really having to go all the way to deuterium depleted water. Like the optimum range of deuterium in the body is around 120 or lower, right? That's the goal, is to get it down there. Once the deuterium level in the body is that low, you're gonna make cellular hydration really easy for your body. And so that's a hack that I've employed for not just myself, but my whole family, because we all drink that water. But it doesn't have to go
going
all.
back to the previous videos, but you have kind of specifically emphasized on deuterium and whatnot, that it predominantly your body will create deuterium depleted water by usually using body fat for energy or
Yeah,
or fat for energy. And then what do you hear from doctors? Stop eating fat.
correct. Correct. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
get
Because
started.
that's driving up your LDL cholesterol or whatever, right? Where I just clearly stated today, well, if you're taking a bunch of vitamin D and your vitamin D is not going up, your LDL cholesterol is certainly going up because it's trying to transport all this vitamin D that you're consuming to your liver, right? So
So,
there's
so
a lot
knowing
of
all
things.
that, is it why there is a link from taking cholesterol lowering drugs, then going to erectile dysfunction drugs and TRT and so on and so
Mhm, mhm.
on?
Yeah,
Right?
because see, let's just explain a potential scenario that's actually quite likely, highly likely that happens, right? You go to the doctor, maybe you're 28 years old, 32 years old, and your vitamin D level is no good, right? And so the doctor just says, just start taking some vitamin D. So you start taking 2,000, 5,000 units of vitamin D per day for a year, maybe 2 years, right? And you go back and your vitamin D level's now okay. But then they check your LDL cholesterol and it's gone up, right? So they're like, oh, change your diet, et cetera, work out more, et cetera. You keep taking your vitamin D because your vitamin D level isn't great, but it's acceptable now. And, you go back next year or the year after that, and your vitamin D level hasn't really changed very much. It's still not great. It's in the middle, but your LDL has continued to climb. So now the doctor gives you a statin, right, or a cholesterol control medication. Well, what you've done is you've stifled. Uh, let me share my screen so we know what we're talking about. Um, you're taking vitamin D, right? And now all of a sudden your LDL has gone up. Now the doctor gives you a medication that's going to lower this substrate. So even though you were taking the vitamin D, they gave you a medication that's going to lower the main substrate that's going to eventually lead to your testosterone and eventually lead to your estrogen. So, depending on whether you're male or female, you are going to be impacted directly or indirectly in your libido, right? Because if you're male, estrogen is actually driving your libido. And so it's very, a little bit of that goes a long way. It's also in reverse. A little bit of lowering of estrogen goes a long way in crushing your libido, right? Same thing
And
with
I see
females.
this a lot.
Yeah. And same thing with females, right? Females, testosterone drives their libido. They make a little bit of it, right? So a little bit of decrease, what does it do? It drives down the libido. A little bit of an increase drives up the libido, right? You got to think about it like that. What hormone do men make very little of? Estrogen. That's the one that fine tunes the system of sex drive and desire and needs and wants. And on the flip side, females, what do they make very little of? Testosterone. So it can be, see, the smaller the number, the finer control the body has of what it does downstream, non-genomic effects, right? So it's reversed. A lot of people don't even know that. Like some doctors don't even really know that. They're like, oh, here's some testosterone replacement therapy for a man, right? That's going to drive up your libido. No, it's not. Not if he can't make enough estrogen from that testosterone, and not if you're squashing his cholesterol too. He doesn't stand a chance to make any estrogen. His libido's not going to go anywhere, right? Because he's not making enough estrogen to support that. Or especially the therapy that most doctors start you with, they give you some testosterone and then they give you some an estrogen blocker, right? Like an aromatase inhibitor. Here, take this injection and then take these pills every day, right? And like, what's the point? Like you went to him for testosterone and libido and sex drive, and he's squashing the one thing that drives that for men, right? The same thing on the flip side with females, right? They start giving them estrogen and progesterone, but they don't give them any testosterone, and they're not making any testosterone. Their libido doesn't go anywhere.
Let's talk about liver's importance into all this because
Yes.
we always get this, hey, you need to control your cholesterol, you need to control your fats, this and that. But in reality, your liver will create whatever the hell you need. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's not dietary intake that actually plays so much role.
No, and that's actually explained by this little phenomenon here, right? Vitamin D, right? Oral vitamin D supplementation. If you take it for long enough or high enough doses, what do we see? We see LDL cholesterol go up and up and up. Why is that happening? Because the body knows, hey, this vitamin D that you're consuming, right? Because this isn't like vitamin D supplementation or oral vitamin D coming into the body. This is not a new thing. We do this from fats as well. Like in the winter, when you live somewhere where it's winter, pork, for example, has vitamin D in it. Pork fat, I should say. And so whenever you consume pork fat or tallow, which is like the fat around organs from animals and stuff like that, that has vitamin K, vitamin D, vitamin E, all the fat soluble vitamins in it. So this is not like an unknown thing for the body. This is actually an evolutionary adaptation. When you're consuming oral vitamin D, the body knows that it's fat soluble and not water soluble. So what does it do? The liver has to do that work. What does the liver do? Upregulates LDL, which is, and again, this is a lot of people don't know this, so I'm making an assumption I should clarify. LDL, when you see the marker LDL on your blood work, it is not actually the cholesterol molecule. It's a transport protein, right? So it's an LDL transport protein. So it's transporting LDL cholesterol or any fat soluble substrate that needs to make it to the liver to be transformed. So LDL starts to go up in the winter. That should be normal for everybody if you're living a circadian friendly lifestyle, because you're probably going to consume less carbohydrates and more fats. And hopefully those fats are from healthy animals that have spent the summer outside. And you're getting vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin A from these fat soluble or these fat soluble vitamins that have made it into the fats of the animals that you're eating. And so the liver will upregulate vitamin D. But if you do that year round, right, you're always only getting your vitamin D or your fat soluble vitamins from consuming a fat source. That includes an oral supplement, because that is what it is. It's a fat source with a vitamin D in it. Then your LDL is going to go up. It has no choice because it has to transport that to the liver somehow. And your liver will produce that irrelevant of what you put in your mouth because it has to transport it.
Yeah, and we have this scare from every doctor usually that hasn't updated their knowledge that LDL is really bad, when we kind of get into the truth that it's not just LDL, it's inflammation that comes with it, which is usually paired with poor lifestyle choices, poor habits, smoking, drinking alcohol, not moving, not exercising, eat
Yeah.
highly processed foods that inflame your stomach, and so on and so forth. So looking at, and like a blue zones, when you look at their blood markers, their LDL is through the roof, and they live
Yeah,
less than anyone else.
yeah, and but here's the thing, right? They are consuming whole foods, right? They're consuming whole foods. They're not consuming processed food, and they're usually pretty active, right? They're usually pretty active as far as like walking a lot, that sort of stuff. And the other thing that the doctors tend to ignore is that inflammation part, right? Like a doctor might look at like CRP, right?
Before you go there, I kind of wanted to kind of, because I spoke to the doctor a couple of weeks ago, and he was so kind of distraught that people don't trust them anymore. And I think it's probably the better description is not doctors are ignoring it, but they are not being taught that there is correlation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And they
yeah.
are so busy that they don't even have time to explore it anymore. They just ingrained
No, well,
into
and
it.
that's honestly, it's not even, yeah, it's not even a distrust of the doctor, right? It's the distrust of the system that the doctor uses, right? That's probably the best way to explain it. It's not so much like I don't like most doctors are smart people. Just like you said, they don't have the time. They're in a system that makes it so they don't have the time to think for themselves. And if they are employed by, like, especially a big system like a hospital, like a chain hospital and stuff like that, not only do they not have the time, even if they were to amplify their knowledge, they might be reprimanded by not following the algorithm, right? So it's not surprising that people don't trust doctors, but it's not the doctors that they don't trust. It's the system that doctors are operating in that is not
It almost
trustworthy.
brings us to the longevity clinics, and that they are so engraved into peptide on this, peptide for that, peptide for that. I'm like, do you really need all these drugs that they are pushing on you for longevity's sake, when in reality they just could have prescribed you 2 weeks in Mexico?
Correct, right? Because see, the other thing about peptides is they're active, right? They're not hormones or anything like that. They are active. The moment you inject them into the body, they're going to do things. Well, guess what? Peptides are made from amino acids, and if your body can actively fold proteins correctly and stuff like that, you're going to make lots of peptides on your own. And the other thing is, most of these peptides, they're not synthetic. They're just uh, they're synthetic in the sense that they are trying to replicate what the body already does, like GLP-1, for example. You already make GLP-1. It's just that you are not making enough of it to actually control your appetite correctly. So now you got to take a synthetic version of it, right? Or other peptides like BPC 157, a healing peptide. Well, guess where it was discovered? In your own body, in your own stomach. Your own stomach and your own body makes that peptide. So peptides are kind of a highlight of the ignorance, right? A highlight of the ignorance of the human body is that all peptides are being modeled after peptides that your body already naturally makes. How does it makes them? It makes them through proper hydration so that the proteins don't get misfolded. It makes it through proper sunlight exposure so that the ATPase, the thing that's folding proteins, works efficiently. And so that they get assembled correctly into the right peptide marker, making sure that electromagnetic fields aren't breaking them apart for electromagnetic fields, right? So if you're doing those three things, you're going to make a lot of the healing peptides that, or not just healing peptides, but peptides in general that really push your body into a healthy state without having to take it exogenously. Now, having said that, right, there are things, and I get it, there are not controllable, right? Electromagnetic fields is one of them, right? You may be in a zone or in an area where you don't have control of the electromagnetic fields and they're high enough that they are affecting you. In that particular case, that's when peptide therapy, if you know what you're doing, can be helpful. That's when certain hormone therapy, if you know what you're doing, can be helpful. But you got to be, you kind of, it's not a set and forget type of thing because you're combating an environmental stressor, right? Eventually, the stress is still happening. You're just putting a band-aid on some of the
It's something
markers.
that I want to add. It's not so that you don't want to control it. You probably, a lot of times I found there is an option to control it, but they have been exposed to that environment for so long, they just don't want to.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Like, hey, I've been living here for forever, right? And I just found out that it's not a good environment, but it's too much of a hassle to actually control it or do something about it. So I'm not going to do
Well,
anything about
the highlight is when we did a live video last time, and they're like, everyone's outside apart from some people, and they're like, and I know that those who are not outside, when I speak to them, they have a lot of inflammatory issues, diet, appetite control issues, and so on and so forth.
it. Mhm.
The opportunity to go outside is there, but the capacity to mentally understand importance of it isn't there because that habit is not forced. That habit is not developed yet. Like we've
Yeah,
talked a
yeah,
million times about how I train. Every time I finish training, specifically like really heavy training, I'll go outside just to not take TB 500 and BPC and all these peptides because I feel
yeah.
my joints don't need that. And just a while ago, I had a conversation in a gym with somebody who's like, "Yeah, I always take my BPC 157 in my elbows and this and that." And I'm like, "You're just a drug addict. No, really good for you. Like, how is it really good for you to inject something every single day? You don't lack. There is no such thing as there is not enough injections for you. It's just not a thing."
Right, right. You're not deficient in BBC. You're just not making it like the drug, right? Another way to put it, right? Like your body doesn't make vitamin D, so you need vitamin D now. That's very rare that your body doesn't make vitamin D. It's more of you don't put it in the right environment to make the vitamin D, and therefore you're opting for the easy way out. And most of the time, it's not even that easy, right? Most of the time, when I see somebody who's really vitamin D deficient, and they're like, "I'm taking vitamin D and it's still not moving," I'm like, "Yeah, it's gonna be that way for a little bit. We got to do some other things to kind of get that system working correctly. It's not that you are incapable of making vitamin D. It's that your body hasn't; those systems have been offline for so long that your body doesn't really." have the capabilities to make vitamin D because hydration might be off to the point where even oral vitamin D supplementation doesn't go up.
To me, it brings a question. What is cholesterol made of if we have really low fat diets? If your liver still wants to make as much as it needs anyway.
Yeah, it would be made from fatty acids, right? So your body can transform even if you're eating a very low fat. Now, there is an extent where you just don't like if you do it for long enough, yeah, you're not going to have enough fatty acids in the bloodstream. That's kind of more of a starvation type scenario, like you have absurdly low body fat on you, and so basically it's coming from your own body fat, right? Your body, unless you are like 2% body fat, you have enough body fat on you as a male that your liver is going to transform those fatty acids into cholesterol backbones, right? Um, and glycerol backbones and so on.
Do we
So,
know what kind of environment we need to produce certain like healthy amount of cholesterol?
um,
From a
No,
visual
because
standpoint.
it's going to vary depending on your body fat, and it's going to vary depending on how much actual red light the liver gets.
Mm.
Right. So well, I kind of answered it a little bit. The right environment for your body to produce it. Now, the amount, that's going to be variable depending on those two variables that I mentioned. But the liver needs infrared light in order to upregulate all of its systems. And that is what's going to allow it to make the proper amount for you. Right.
So this brings me to kind of conclusion. If you're super lean, always work out in a gym only, do your cardio in a gym only, do all the other things, is when you're gonna run into sexual dysfunction at the end of your diet and prep. Which is
Mhm.
like to me, it was always blowing my mind. What do you mean you don't have sex drive when you're dieting? I've never lose strength. I've never had issues with that. Even when I've been on last 2 days of a prep,
Mhm.
but it seems it's because I always do my cardio outside.
Mhm.
I always kind of consume decent meats, decent amount of food and that are high quality and whatnot. Whereas everyone else, they like to do their Stairmasters and all that kind of stuff. Great tool, but to me, it's like you're wasting so much potential of how beneficial effects of nature by just sticking to machines, right?
Yeah, and sticking to synthetic foods, right? At the end of prep, it's much easier to, just whip up a protein shake that's low fat and drink it down with your veggies than to actually chew, and cook high quality meat, right? Because meats are going to come with some fats, right? And those fats can readily be turned into substrates, right? Because what I mentioned of as far as like cholesterol goes, your body's going to, number one, any cholesterol you consume can immediately be used, right, as cholesterol in the body, but it almost always gets transformed into fat, but it can always go the other way. Any fats you're consuming or fats on your body fat, can be used by the liver to turn it into cholesterol, right? So the fact that you are eating whole foods, even deep into prep, and that you're getting outside often enough that your liver is getting enough energetic support from infrared light therapy kind of keeps that system running correctly, right? It goes back to what we talked about today, right? If you are getting proper sunlight and you're getting proper hydration, right? Let me just share it one more time. Right. If you're getting proper sunlight and you're getting proper hydration, you're going to make good
And
vitamin D.
before you even go further down, it's like if you get a proper sunlight in what time exactly?
Just sometime in the morning or the evening would be the proper time to make sure that hydration. So basically, there's
So for
two times.
hydration purposes, morning and evening, I infrared.
Mhm.
What about
Yes.
converting your cholesterol into vitamin D?
Yeah, and then exactly. So now turning the cholesterol into vitamin D and influencing sex drive. So this point right here, and then testosterone or estrogen, depending on whether you're male or female, that's going to come in the middle of the day. Now, in the summertime, that window is really big. It's like 10 a.m. until 3 p.m.
And I think this is a point that so many miss because
Mhm.
I've seen the kind of shift towards, yeah, I'm getting my morning walk and I'm getting this and I'm getting that. And then they still have issues with their sexual health.
Mhm.
And it's because they're missing that midday.
Yeah, yeah, there's 2 points, right? The infrared, right? I always opt for the morning time because that's the time when you're dehydrated from waking up from sleeping, right? And not drinking any water for, 7 hours or 8 hours. So you're already that's the most dehydrated point of the day from basically all humans. And so that's the most important time to initiate that hydration cascade of infrared light therapy, right?
So
And
you wake
then
up, you're living in UK, it's raining like there is literally floods coming. Best option for you would be popping up red light on.
Mhm. Yeah, especially in the winter when it's raining and stuff like that. Yes, I would say a red light therapy intense enough and shining it
And
on.
then is there a tool midday that someone can use if there are still no good circumstances to be outside to influence that vitamin D convert?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So there are called Spurdy D lamps. Those are UVA and UVB lamps. I wouldn't use they're kind of like a mini tanning bed. I wouldn't use them by themselves. I would use them with infrared light adjunct to that.
So if somebody is office bound, how big those lumps are? Are they easy to carry around or whatever?
Yeah, they're about the size of a monitor, like
Right. Okay. So if somebody is, let's say, because obviously UK is a big uh, audience for us. So somebody who hasn't got the time and every single excuse to not go outside. So they could get a red light treatment in the morning for 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever, cook your breakfast
Mhm.
in front of the lamp. And then you have your UVB, UVA infrared lights set up in office. For how long would it be beneficial for them to be exposed to that?
20, 30 minutes.
So 20, 30 minutes in a midday, you throw that on and you're sorted. You can live like a hermit.
Yeah, now it needs to be skin exposed, right? Because UV light specifically cannot penetrate clothing, right? Unless it's natural clothing, but even then, not very much. Infrared light, for example, it will penetrate anything that's not synthetic, right? So if you have a cotton shirt on and you put your red light therapy on you, it will penetrate cotton or non-synthetic fibers. But if you have anything synthetic on you, even the red light therapy won't penetrate that. So by default, I tell people you kind of have to at least have your shirt off so that you can get the full benefits from those
So
light therapies
details
because
matter.
yeah, because they're also much weaker than the sun, right? Like if you were to go out in the middle of the summertime, especially with like natural clothing on, like cotton, you might even still tan through that cotton, right? But because the sun is so much more powerful than the lights are significantly less powerful by like 100 times, and so you need to take the shirt off. You need to get the skin exposed in order to
I
get the
think
right.
last time I checked, it was like 4 or 10 seconds of being outside is same like taking vitamin D pill in the middle of the day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you do it correctly, right? If you take your shirt off and you go outside, it's literally a few minutes and you've made enough vitamin D for that whole day, right? Like 2 minutes. If you spend a full 30 minutes outside in the middle of the day with strong sun, you've probably made enough vitamin D for a whole week.
So for somebody who's watching, who wants to be healthier, and more often than not, increase their mood, increase their libido, and all those kind of things, it could be that you're lacking not testosterone, not HRT, but vitamin D production, which
Yeah.
could be improved by going outside in correct times, making sure you're exposing your skin to the sun,
Mhm.
and making sure that your hydration is in place. And funnily enough, the hydration can be improved by doing something that makes you sweat, by sounds of it.
Yeah, yeah. Infrared light therapy combined with a little bit of cardio, and then making sure that the water. Now, I will say this, right? Hydration, cellular hydration can be stopped if there is fluoride in the system,
That's
right?
another story. It's like,
Yeah, I know, I know. And the reason for that is water is H2O, right? And fluoride competes with the O. It competes with oxygen at the mitochondrial level. It's more electronegative and bigger. It blocks the process of cellular hydration production. So if you do anything with water, right? Maybe you're not buying deuterium depleted water or getting a well. At the very least, you want to filter out fluoride in your water so that you do not stop the natural production of water in the cells.
Yeah. I'm sure there is a video about fluoride as well in hundreds of videos we've put out so far. But this has been very thorough. Appreciate your time, David, as usual. And again, it's not as just like one thing to that. There seems to be, the more you look at it from like a bird's view, the more sense it will make why one or another system in your body kind of starts to falter. You get fatigued, you get brain fog and sexual dysfunction and all those kind of things. So appreciate your time. And if anyone has any comments, let us know. And I'll see you next video.